Hi there, this is the Pickled Gurkin trap in the Chigorin variation of the two knights defense from the game Anton Gurkin or Gurkin against Dmitry Popov, Kazakhstan 2013. e4 and e5, knight f3, hitting the e-pawn, knight c6, defending the Italian with bishop c4, and black enters into the two knights defense with knight to f6. Well, rather than going for a type of Max Lang attack with a d4, white can try the popular knight g5 move, possibly entering into a fried liver attack by targeting the pawn on f7. The most popular defense is the obvious d5, and after e takes on d5, black does best not to capture the pawn on d5, but rather move the knight on c6. Black could play the Fritz variation with knight d4, or go for the Chigorin variation with knight to a5. That's the one we're looking at here. The Chigorin variation with knight a5, hitting the bishop, which is going to win a pawn by playing bishop b5 check. The c pawn interposes c6, d takes c6, b takes on c6. And white is a pawn up, but black does have very active piece play and adequate compensation. Well, the bishop will usually go back here to e2. If it goes back to e2, then we can expect h6 kicking the knight away, back to f3, then e4 is going to come, and black gets some very active play. Perhaps knight to e5, where black's going to play bishop d6, or even queen to d4. Let's have a look at queen d4, pretty much forcing f4, where black could play now bishop c5, and black has a very strong attack. Rather than dropping the bishop back to e2, white can try queen to f3, the idea being that the pawn on c6 is pinned, and if pawn takes the bishop on b5, then queen's going to pick up the rook on a8 with a 1 position. Well, how's black going to respond to queen f3? Well, the natural move is bishop b7. Most juniors seem to go for that one. Black can also play the Paulson variation with queen to b6. But there's another interesting move, and that's rook to b8, where black here squanders a second pawn, but does get a very active position. Offering up the c pawn now, which white's going to take. Bishop takes on c6, knight takes on c6. After queen takes c6 check, the novice is going to adjudge white to have a far superior position here with two pawns up. However, it's not so simple. Chess never really is. Well, how's black going to get out of this check? Not the obvious bishop to d7, rather knight dropping back to d7. And all of a sudden we see the knight on g5 is targeted, and the queen on c6 is going to be harassed in a number of ways. So, d3 is going to defend the knight on g5. Rather than harassing the queen immediately with a move like bishop b7 or rook b6, which will allow the queen to drop back to c4 with a mate threat on f7, first bishop e7 makes a lot of sense, hitting the knight. And the knight could drop back here to f3 with around equality. I believe in this position my namesake and possible family member, the renowned Nikolai Kopylov, played h4 in his 1954 game in Leningrad against Borisenko. It left black slightly better, but white actually went on to win. Perhaps more appealing is knight to e4. It certainly looks more aggressive. And black here will continue, not bishop b7, which is going to close up the rook on b8. Rather, rook to b6 is hitting the queen. The queen is going to drop back to either c4 or a4. But how about queen a8? One of my students asked me. Well, then black's going to get a fantastic position. Rook b7 is going to close in the queen. The threat now is going to be knight to b6, picking up the queen. White's going to have to play a move like bishop e3 to prevent knight b6. And if black castles, white cannot pick up the pawn on a7 with bishop takes on a7 because queen a5 check is going to pick up the bishop on a7 with a 1 game for black. So queen a8 is not going to happen. If queen to c4, then it would appear that bishop a6 is going to be quite appealing for black. So queen a4 makes the most sense. Black here can castle, and maybe bishop b7 was also on the cards for black. If knight bc3, a developing move by white, which makes a lot of sense as it's eyeing up the juicy square on d5, which can do a lot of damage. Again, bishop b7, perhaps objectively black's best move, but f5 seems a little bit more natural, hitting the knight, and in so doing loosening up that square on c5. So when the knight jumps back to g3, I should point out that white will get nothing with that check. Queen c4, king h8 is going to leave the queen actually stranded perhaps on c4. So after knight g3, knight c5 hits the queen. Again, bishop b7 might have been black's best move objectively. White can just about hold on with queen to a5 with a slightly better position for black. If queen takes on a7, it's going to be game over. Well, why is that? Because rook a6 is going to hit the queen. Again, bishop b7 was always on the cards for black. The queen goes to its only flight square, queen b8. But now bishop d6 hits the queen again. The queen's going to drop back. And I should point out as well, rather than bishop to d6, knight back to b7 was also extremely good for black. But after bishop to d6, the queen drops back to the flight square on b5. Rook a5 hits the queen. And now queen to c6, and black's going to win now with bishop to b7. The queen has nowhere to run to. The only chance white has is a counter threat with bishop to g5. The bishop is loose, but queen takes on g5 will allow queen takes the bishop on d6. And if the queen runs to b8, then the queen has a flight square to b6. But black is winning here by giving up the exchange. Rook to f6. Because now after bishop takes f6, g takes f6 means that queen on c6 is going nowhere. Black's going to pick up the queen and win the game. So this has been the Pickled Gurkin trap in the Chigorin variation of the two knights defense. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.